Welcome to the Secure Connections podcast, brought to you by IOTSA, the Internet of Things Security Services Association. I'm Brian Sherman, Content Director for IOTSA and host of today's episode. And joining me are David Barton, Chief Technology Officer at HighWire Networks, and Michael Roth, Chief Executive Officer for EVO Security. We'll be discussing the challenges of multi-factor authentication for MSPs and their clients, as well as some other cybersecurity pain points today. So welcome to the Secure Connections podcast, David and Michael.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you both, although I think you're both in warmer spots than I am today, but I won't be too envious of that fact. David, why don't we start off with some introductions? Tell us a little about yourself and HighWire.
Sure. Again, I'm Dave Barton. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at HighWire. I'm a lifelong security guy. I've been doing information security since, I'm not going to tell you how long, just know it's a long time. Started back in the Air Force, spent some time in healthcare, about 15 years in telecom, building large security programs. Lately, I've been working in companies that are really targeting smaller, mid SMB, mid-market type of companies. And so here at HighWire, we are a 20-year-old channel-only company. We focus on delivering best-in-class products for our channel partners who then deliver those to their customers.
Very good. How about yourself, Michael? Can you give us a brief intro?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So again, my name is Mike Roth. I'm the CEO and founder of EVO Security. I have a background as an engineer, and I was in private equity and also venture capital for a little while too. And I transitioned back onto the technical side of things to launch EVO in mid 2018. Specifically to offer MFA, SSO, and privileged access management to small to medium businesses and mid-market sized companies. So some alignment there with David. But what's unique about our company is we realized, well, how are we going to scale and do that? And it became very obvious that serving the managed service provider would be the clear path for us. And we got really excited about that. And we are exclusively focused on serving MSPs, and we're just now coming to market, and we've got a fantastic partnership with HighWire, so really excited about that.
Awesome. Before we dig too deep into the cybersecurity space, I want to discuss something maybe a little more positive. Not that cybersecurity is a negative, but to say 2020 has been challenging, I think would be a huge understatement for any of us to make right now. But what's the one positive thing that you'll take away from this year?
So I'll go first. I think one of the big positives I've seen is a renewed interest in cybersecurity. I know we weren't going to go there yet, but our partners are looking for ways to add more value to their end customers. Some of those partners don't do any security work. And so partnering with us allows them to take best-in-class products that are typically enterprise-focused and deliver them and make them available to their end customers who have a huge need for cybersecurity. Right. And I can talk about that need in a bit, but at the end of the day, there's more awareness. People are paying attention. There's more interest. And so for us at HighWire, amidst all the chaos in the world today, we're busier than we've ever been. And it's strictly because people are going, wait a minute, how can I do more with less? How can I enable my customers to be better without necessarily saddling them with extensive CapEx, OpEx kind of numbers?
That's an excellent point. How about yourself, Mike? What's a positive takeaway from 2020?
Yeah, pretty similar. I think, from our perspective as a vendor, what we've seen is the opportunity to serve MSPs has actually increased with the pandemic. for many of the reasons that David mentioned. Cybersecurity has become top of mind. And, when you think about everyone who's working in a remote location, your login and identity and access to all of your company resources becomes and is now your new perimeter for the most part, depending on how the SMB or client is structured and as far as their infrastructure goes. So for us, that's really positive. We think that we have a really big opportunity to build a very meaningful product and serve the space like we think they should and they deserve.
Both good points of insight. I know I've talked to two MSPs this morning, just about similar about where they're at their business, and it's amazing that with the exception of a couple of verticals like retail and some retail's doing pretty well, but restaurants and some hospitality, most of the MSPs seem to be doing extremely well. And I think the good part, one of the more common discussion points is, guess what? All the stuff we told our clients over the years is coming true.
Right.
And they can actually use us, and we're valuable. And it's been a positive year for the industry as far as what the industry can provide to the small business community and even some of the larger businesses as well. So very good. Also, there's a reason we wanted to bring both of you together for this conversation, because usually we'll have like one-on-one with companies, but there's a good conversation to have today. And what I wanted to do was, David, throw out to you is, what is the relationship between HighWire Networks and EVO Security?
So early on, I mentioned one of the things we do really well is find promising technology companies that solve a business problem, right? And we make them scalable and affordable and consumable by our partners and then our end customers. And so one of those customers or one of those partners of ours, EVO, they have a product that does those things. And so for us, we wanted to find a partner who was growing, who was maybe not the best known in the world, and that's not a slight to EVO, but they have great technology, right? And it's just a function of people not necessarily knowing who they are yet. But for us, it gave us an opportunity to take this great idea, this great platform, and help them grow it to a partner base that we already have, right? And we have partners and their end customers who are asking for multi-factor. How do I do this? How do I do this smartly? I know it's not a word, but I like to use it anyway. How do they do it efficiently? How do they do it repeatably? Also probably not a word. But the point is, EVO fits the bill for those, right? For us and for our end customers.
Very good. Any thoughts to add to that, Mike?
Yeah, I'll add, this has been a really fantastic partnership for us because just like David was mentioning, we're fairly new to the game, although our technology, we've been working on it and it's been around for a little while. But they've just been absolutely fantastic to work with, especially helping us come into the market, testing out new functionality and features. Which, by the way, everything that we build and everything that we do is based on feedback. We're not interested in doing anything in a vacuum. So if an MSP leader or engineer or technician says, hey, this is what I would really like, and you need to move this over here or that over there, that's what we want to do. And HighWire has been fantastic at that. And what's really exciting is that we have an opportunity to really grow and serve their customer base. I think it's going to be great.
Now, the channel is a great place for collaboration too, especially in the cybersecurity space. That's one thing I've learned probably over the last 3 years with IOTSA is that there's so many opportunities when people leverage their insight and their knowledge and the services they provide. So it's great. I'm glad you could both join me today. Now we're talking originally about multi-factor authentication, and I know that's invaluable, especially in today's environment with everything going on with the pandemic and even just the transition that was going on before 2020 hit. What methods are you finding are most acceptable to end users? Because I know that's one of the big pain points, is not just having it, but having it utilized.
I think end users are coming to the realization that username passwords aren't good enough anymore. We see that, the business problem in the industry that continues to happen is credentials are getting taken and they're getting used and bad things are happening. And so the business problem we're trying to solve is that very thing of how do we help our end customers authenticate in a way that is repeatable, right, is secure, and has attribution, which means, Mike is who Mike says he is because he has multiple factors that say it's Mike. We as adults have factors that identify us, right? Not all bald guys are the same. There's things about us that are different that identify us. There's factors, and in the electronic world, we're starting to build more factors. You see it when you got your iPhone and you hold it up and you look at it and it authenticates you, right? It's looking at, I don't remember the number, but hundreds of factors in your face. If you held your phone up to a picture, it's not going to work, right? Because it doesn't have those factors that Apple's looking for in their iPhone. And no, this is not a pitch for Apple. It's a pitch for multiple factors, right? So for us and for the end user, while they understand it, they need it. Sometimes it's a learning curve. It's an education for them. But at the end of the day, simplicity wins. And so when you've got a product that you put in front of whatever it is you're trying to secure, whether it's Office 365, G Suite, whatever, that at a minimum, it just does a challenge to say is this you and do you approve this on your phone? It's really simple, right? I don't have to remember or have to carry a key fob or whatever. I've got an app on my phone and all it does is say, hey, is this you trying to log in? Yes or no? Right? That's huge, because if the answer is no, you put no, access is denied. We don't have that on Office 365. We don't have that without some form of multi-factor authentication. And that's why it's so important. And I think to your point, Brian, users are seeing that if it's easy to use, easy to adopt, they're going to take it and run with it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's been my experience.
Yeah. Even I think back to, using my laptop every day is I've gotten very accustomed to using the fingerprint to log in. But there's times I come in, I live in the Northeast, it's cold. I come in, my hands are too cold, it doesn't work.
Right.
So it's good to have, option 2 and option 3 to go to. But if they make it easy, I don't grumble as much as I do. But I know the uncertainty of when you first introduced multi-factor authentication to people who've never had to do that before, it can be concerning for them. Do you think that's just because they're not used to it, or what are some of the other thoughts that go into deciding which systems to use with which clients?
I think number one, we have to protect the crown jewels. So, do I need multi-factor for accessing a spreadsheet that is tracking my kid's baseball team? Probably not. Right. And I could share it with every family out there that's on my kid's baseball team. It doesn't matter, right? There's no value to it. But when you start thinking about risk as a security guy, we're focused on what's my risk and how do I mitigate that, right? So I would start, if I'm thinking about a multi-factor product like EVO, I would start thinking about where's my crown jewels? What are the things that are going to get me on the front of the newspaper? And let's put MFA in front of those first and start to phase it in, right? The whole, you can't boil the ocean, right? You can't eat the elephant in one bite. Those are legit, right? There's a reason why people came up with those ideas, is because we don't want to MFA everything, right? Because eventually our users will have some choice words for us that we might recognize. So at the end of the day, pick what's most important, spend a lot of time with your users, right? Help them understand why we're going here, walk them through the process, to teach them how to use it. It really is as simple as getting an email, enrolling, putting in some data, putting your phone number, validating it works, and then putting it in front of that website or that asset you're trying to protect and letting it work. I mean, it's not as scary as it sounds at the end of the day.
Do you see a lot of partners ensuring that they're validating kind of the process you talked about, is making sure they come back, a week later, or are they checking in, an hour later after they're using these things and getting feedback on the specific things that are very difficult to get into that maybe aren't as important, maybe aren't crown jewels that they thought they would be at the beginning?
Haven't seen a lot of that, Brian. I don't know, Mike, have you seen much of that?
Not it kind of here and there. I think, because we're a full-on identity provider, if the application or system is capable of integrating, let's say via SAML or OpenID Connect or something like that, we say, hey, well, why don't we just go integrate with that too on our side, and that way you're fully protected, then we'll do it. But I agree. I think like you said, focusing on the crown jewels first, really sensitive information, or systems and applications. I think that's the best way to start. And if it makes sense, kind of building out from there, then that's what we can do.
What are some of the other challenges of implementing multi-factor authentication with a small business in particular?
Well, I think a small business that doesn't have a partner that can build it for them may struggle a little bit, right? Most of the end customers that I'm referring to here, if they were to go do this themselves, they would have to stand up environments, and they'd have to have somebody know how to do it and manage it and organize it, and do all of the work that we do every day for all the products and platforms that we use and we sell. So I think some of the biggest challenges is just the technical gap, right? At the end of the day, there's so many or so little security IT practitioners that they have to outsource that work. So if they try to do it themselves, I think the biggest barrier is just the technical gap, right? The beauty of EVO is it's very simple. So if we had a partner or an end customer with plenty of IT talent and the time to do it, then it doesn't make sense necessarily to have somebody manage it for you. But we haven't seen a lot of that, right? We've seen mostly, hey, we need it. We've got audit reasons why we need it, but we just don't have anybody to manage it for us. Perfect. This is what we do every day.
Gotcha. What is it? Now, you mentioned ease. Obviously, that's the important part. But from the MSP's perspective, is they want to know, where do we fit in the equation too when we're bringing on new tools that are easier and are very logical? What's the MSP's ongoing role with multi-factor and two-factor authentication?
So I think it depends. We have some partners, Brian, who don't want to be involved outside of making the connection and having the sale, right? And that's fine. At the end of the day, the end customer is their customer, and they manage that relationship. They would rather us on the back end manage the technology, and they manage the relationship. It makes perfect sense. On the flip side, we have some partners who have some strong technical backgrounds, and they want to do more with the technology. So, for us, one of our strengths as a company is we're flexible. You want to do that piece? Great. You do that. We'll do the rest. And together we'll deliver this great service.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mentioned talking to a couple of MSPs this morning. One's in the financial industry, primarily. He's in the New Jersey area, and he works with a lot of originally larger financial companies now that he supported directly, but now his team supports many of the smaller brokers and other agencies. So
Sure.
He feels like he needs to do more for those because they're looking to him directly, but he's also has like manufacturing clients he mentioned as well. And for them, he has to do things a little differently on a lower level, especially, he can't add a lot more man hours to those type of accounts. So you have like staggered support options? Do you have partners that do that they'll look to you more to handle more, and then on other things that they'll want to handle, like the direct support?
Yeah, we do. Again, it oftentimes depends on the partner and their security and or technical background, and in some cases just workload. Do they have the time to do it? In all cases, it's them plus us together delivering best in class products and services to the end customer.
Gotcha. How enrolled or how involved can they get in like rolling out and training new users, managing the systems, and then supporting it? Are there a variety of options in that level for them?
There are, training them. The beauty is, and Brian or Mike, you've probably seen this with other partners. It's easy. I mean, it is easy. So I'd like to say there's a training component, but there's really not, right? Outside of a couple PowerPoints of you got an app on your phone, click on the app, click approve, click deny. It's pretty straightforward. So, from a training perspective, I would say there's probably not a lot, but we've got materials. We can help with that. They can facilitate that themselves. With regard to adding users, we can work together with that in a co-managed fashion, or they can do it themselves. We really don't care, right? At the end of the day, what works the best for your customer?
Oh, that makes sense. So with the continuing work disruptions caused by the pandemic and state local mandates are probably the bigger one. Right now, we're cycling back up again. I'm in Pennsylvania. We're seeing a lot more controls come in. What are the risks and threats that really MSP should be most concerned with now?
Oh, that's a good question. I'd like to say there's just a few.
I would like that too.
It'd make my job easier, but then they may not need me. So maybe I don't want just a few. This is kind of a sidetrack, right? It's really not around MFA. It's more around ransomware. It's more around patching. It's having some early warning alert system that says, hey, something bad is happening over here. While MFA grants access, there's other pieces to providing a top-notch security program for your end customers that you have to pay attention to. So, Mike, I apologize. We're not going to talk about EVO at the second.
Sure.
Ransomware, I saw a stat that said ransomware last year made up more in income for ransomware bad guys than all of the drug trade across the globe.
Yeah.
I wouldn't doubt it.
That's huge.
Yeah, it's outrageous. Yeah.
Right? The FBI says, I think by 2022, which is right around the corner, it's going to be an $8 to $10 billion industry. That's huge. So, I talk about ransomware a lot. At the end of the day, if we're not looking for anomalous behaviors in our networks, we're going to miss it. Ransomware, if anybody tells you they can stop it, I would tell you they really don't understand the problem, right? And again, I apologize. We're segueing just a second. The biggest threat to our end users and our partners' ability to provide services is ransomware. I believe that.
Right. To the earlier point with EVO and Mike, though, too, is when you get a lot of people that are pushing, or I should say businesses pushing people out, there's probably a greater need for multi-factor authentication as well. I would assume you don't want these laptops and applications sitting in somebody's house without any lockdowns on them at all. Is that a fair assessment?
I would agree, right? And I think, the migration to the cloud exacerbates that as well, right? If you don't have multi-factor in front of your data in the cloud, which if you rewind to where I said where you start is where are your crown jewels, right?
Yep.
Go protect those. They're in the cloud, they're on premise, they're on a workstation. I don't care. Put multi-factor in front of it. You got to have encryption. Make sure you're protecting the data itself at rest. But then you have to have something looking for anomalous behaviors, right? Is Brian logged in at 2 a.m. and we know, Brian's probably in bed at 10 at night. So somebody's logged in with your credentials. MFA would have stopped that potentially, but let's say it didn't. That anomaly should trigger somewhere in somebody's world. Hey, Brian's logged in at 2 o'clock. Hey, Brian's logged in from a foreign country he's never been to before, right? Hey, Brian's moving data he's never moved before. All those anomalies, and I talk about anomalies because that's exactly what it is. It's a mathematical deviation from the norm. People say all the time, "Oh, we have false positives." No, we don't. We have anomalies that are good and bad. Maybe Brian is in Europe, right? Maybe he's there for work, so that 2 a.m. here is really, 8 p.m. or 10 o'clock in the morning there. Is it a bad anomaly? No, it's different. But my point is still valid that if you're not looking for those anomalies and have human intelligence evaluating those, you're not going to catch early a ransomware event or a hack event or any other event that somebody's trying to get at your data.
That's a good point, because when you look at, I think, multi-factor authentication, I've just give you history. I go back 25 years using MFA. I was in the pharmaceutical industry originally. So we used to have the little tokens we'd have to carry with us. So for me, it's kind of a comfort level too. And when I have, QuickBooks, I get an email that says you've logged into your QuickBooks. Is this an error? Or you've logged into others.
Right.
It gives me comfort knowing that, it was me. Because I can't think of actually the last time I had one that I had to double check. But at the same point, I like having that insight and oversight because I know my systems are secure.
Sure.
But that's kind of a hard thing sometimes for MSPs to convey to those that are kind of naive when it comes to multi-factor authentication.
It is. I agree. I think. Go ahead. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, one thing that I've talked about when I'm trying to describe MFA, I think the process of MFA is not really that fun. Nobody likes to have to do a second step. But if you ever talk with ethical hackers who are trying to do a pen test or something for your system, they're going to say, "Hey, look, if I can crack a password or I can go fish it out from an email or something like that, and I run into the MFA wall, I'm usually just going to kind of move on to the next easiest target." And so you think about it as the ability to deflect, a bad actor into a different direction, and they kind of run into a wall. And when I describe technically or mechanically what we do is I say, look, think about it like this: you're at the airport, which we are not going to as much right now, but you have to wait in the security line, right? That's really not fun. Our job at EVO is to create the most efficient TSA pre-check or clear aisle as possible for you. And that's where SSO comes into play. And that's where it makes the experience a little bit better. But overall, I think there's the threats on the exterior, and then there's the threats that are on the interior. And you really have to have both to have a holistic, security plan in place. Yeah.
MSPs are really challenged, I think, sometimes trying to explain that to people who have not been affected by a security issue or don't have anybody close that has had to deal with, a ransomware attack where they had to pay Bitcoin and see this. I feel lucky in the fact that I haven't been through it, but I've seen many people and gone through the whole experiences with others, MSPs and cybersecurity companies. But man, that is a disruptive thing to happen to any business. Mm-hmm. But if they haven't had it and they think that they're not going to be a good target, that's a challenge for an MSP to sell.
It is.
Additional layers.
Cybersecurity has always been akin to insurance, right? I worked in companies my whole career that I would go with a strategy, and they said, "Well, we don't need that. We've never had that problem." And then that problem happens, and then they wish they had it. I literally have seen funding You could go talk to my peer group and they'd say, yeah, when we had this bad thing happen, we got funding to go prevent it next time. Right. And cybersecurity is an insurance conversation. As much as we don't want it to be, because insurance has a premise that it may not happen. Cybersecurity has no premise like that. It's going to happen, right? We've got to move away from if it happens to when it does, are we prepared to respond, right? Whether it's a social engineering event or somebody plugs in a USB drive or there's ransomware, whatever. It's gonna happen, right? We all talk this language now. We used to talk, well, what if? There's no ifs anymore. It's all when. It's factual. It's gonna happen. We got to be ready for it at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, we've been with 2020. We've already hit on that. As we started with the pandemic, and then over the last couple of months, we had a lot of things going on election-wise that also raised security issues, especially for those working from, or doing even personal things from their work computers. And now the final straw is always the holiday shopping season, online shopping, and all of the new, ransomware attacks and other issues that come with that. What extra steps should MSPs be taking with their clients and end users this time of year?
I would say the number one thing is awareness. As much as I'd like to say deploy MFA before December 25th, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But teaching your people what's real, what's not real, when to click on links, when not to click on links, making them smarter, right? It's the whole teach a man to fish idea. So let's teach them to be early warning sentinels, if you will. Hey, something's happening out here. Something bad's going on. Tell me about it, so that we as a security organization can respond. And awareness is easy, right? Awareness just takes some time and some tool sets and the willingness to turn it on and let it run. So I think if you're not educating your user base, you may come around between Christmas and New Year's, you may get that call at 2 a.m. saying, hey, we need some help. You signed a contract, you're coming in, I need help, let's go. So, an ounce of prevention, awareness, I think, is top of the list.
Makes sense. So awesome. It's been a great discussion today, but before we sign off, I wanted to check in for final thoughts from you both on advice to MSPs, other thoughts on multi-factor authentication. Mike, why don't we start with you?
Sure. I think the most common form of attack is going to be someone trying to pop your login somehow, whether they're trying to phish some credentials or brute force attack or something. So, MFA, I think, is just really the baseline no-brainer way for you to just mitigate your risk as an MSP. I think that's something that it needs to be talked about more, is that the liability is not just on the SMB side, but it's also on the MSP side too. And so we see it as our responsibility to enable our partners and work with HighWire to deliver a great product that allows them to do that. And I would say again on the going forward into the holidays, don't click on anything you shouldn't click on, should be clicking on. That's just kind of a golden rule. But I think I'll end with, again, EVO, we're built to exclusively serve MSPs. That is all we're doing. And so we're really excited about that. We mean well. We want to build a fantastic product, and just wish everybody happy holidays and stay safe.
Very good. How about yourself, Dave?
I'm going to echo what Mike said. The 80-20 rule is, if you can knock 80% down of your risks down easily, and I think MFA does some of that, then you can focus most of your effort on that 20%, which is a little bit harder to fix. So for our partners and MSPs out there struggling, putting MFA in front takes a lot of that problem away, takes it off the table, and lets you focus on that 20% that you struggle with. And if you need multi-factor, EVO is a great partner, right? We love the product. The relationship is great. They're responsive. They take care of us. I highly recommend them. If you need a partner like us, who's channel only, who can help manage that for you, we would love to have a conversation. At the same time, it is holidays season. To Mike's point and Brian, your point, don't click on stuff. Be smart. Educate your people. Right? It'll pay off. It's worth the time to do so. Have a happy holiday. Love the conversation. Mike, thanks for joining us. Brian, thanks for putting this together. We really appreciate it.
Oh, great having you both. On behalf of IOTA, I'd like to thank David Barton from HighWire Networks and Mike Roth from EVO Security for sharing their expertise and insight with us today. We appreciate everyone who tuned in to listen as well. I encourage all of you to go to iota.com and check out all the association's channel-focused cybersecurity resources. Thank you again, and have a safe and secure day.